Hey, JK here. I want to thank you for sharing Party Day with me. Pack your bags for day 20. We're heading to Wisconsin to get some cheese. Actually, no, we're just going to talk about the number one team in the NL Central, the Milwaukee Brewers, who had a 92-70 record and a positive 81 run differential. Now, the category leaders were very well balanced here, each guy having 3 or 4 different categories that they had under their belt. So let's go ahead and get to them. The leader for at-bats, home runs, RBIs, and strikeouts, Willy Adames. The leader for runs, walks, stolen bases, and on-base percentage, Mr. Christian Yelich. The leader for hits, doubles, total bases, batting average, slugging, and on-base plus slugging, William Contreras. And there was a tie for triples between Bryce Turang and Brian Anderson. Now, I do want to say there is a lot of young talent on this team, and we're going to get to that in just a second. But one of the people who, I'm not going to say he's old and he's not young, but he's kind of there in the middle. Spent some time in Tampa Bay. Now he's been with the Brewers for the last 3 years. Mr. Willy Adames. Now this fella has absolutely seen his numbers improve the more and more he plays. However, there's some drawback to that. Now in the last 3 years he's been with the Milwaukee Brewers. He has a .241 batting average. He has hit 75 home runs and had 238 RBIs. Also, 166 walks. That's pretty good. That's not terrible, especially for a shortstop hitting either in the top of the lineup or in the bottom of the lineup, depending on which Craig Counsell was looking for in that time or in that game. However, with those stats, you also have to come in and remember that he did strike out 436 times. That is an average of 145 times each year. That's not great. Also, his batting average continues to go down. Now, at one point in time, I think his first year, it was 285, and that looked great. However, he was only, I think he had like just over 400 plate appearances. Since then, he's had 530 some odd plus each year, and his batting average has gone down. You know, so he has to improve that. Something else he has to improve, his fielding. He had 14 errors last year. Now, I'm going to give this stat, and there's going to be a very specific qualifier. He had first of all, he had the most errors on the team, but he had the lowest fielding percentage of any player on the team that had 6 or more starts. Now, you might be thinking, why does it have to be 6 starts? Why can't it just be any starts on the team? Because there are individuals who played very few games, like we talked about, maybe 5 games. That's why we had to say 6. And they made 1 error. So they only had X number of chances to make a play. Whereas Adames had 524. He had 524 chances to make a play, and he made 14 errors. So he was perfect on 510 of those, which is good. However, his fielding percentage still high, 0.973. That was the lowest on the team of anyone with 6 or more starts. But he did absolutely have the most errors on the team. The next guy we're talking about, William Contreras, he did great in his first year away from his previous team, the Atlanta Braves. And he obviously led these categories. Now, he had 11 errors. And you might be thinking, okay, Adames had 14. Contreras had 11. What's the big deal? Contreras had over 1,000 chances. So that means a bunted ball, a ball that was thrown to him to get the guy out at first, just a pop fly, a dribbler down the line he had to throw to first or had a decision to try to get a double play. So he had a lot more chances than Willy Adames. So William Contreras absolutely did great. His 2023 had career highs. He did fall short in home runs. He was 3 short, and he also had 22 more strikeouts. He also had 200 more at-bats. So I'll take that ratio, okay? Like, I will absolutely take those 120 strikeouts he had and not have to worry about those extra, however many that he missed. So, William Contreras, definitely great behind the plate. He was doing his work at the plate and behind the plate. Like we talked about, only 11 errors, in over 1,000 chances. Now we're going to get to some of the new guys. I say new guys, the rookies that either came over in trade, like Joey Ortiz, or have come through very quickly through the organization, Jackson Trio. So those two guys are going to make the 40-man roster and very well may be opening day starters. Now, Trio probably going to be the main guy to be starting in the outfield. Ortiz may very well get the chance because Bryce Terang might not continue to develop. Now, he did good. There were a few guys who did very well in 2023. Bryce Terang, Joey Weimer, Andrew Monasterio, and Sal Frelick. They all played in at least 57 games, and they all contributed. They all contributed enough to allow them to win the NL Central, right? So they're only going to develop with each other, with the other rookies, but more importantly, the vets on the team. They brought in a few guys who are absolutely going to be able to help this team, help these rookies get acclimated, hopefully help the pitching staff, which we're going to get to in a minute, because they are down. Worse than Willy Adames batting average, and that's bad. That's real bad. But in any case, lots of young talent on this team, lots of guys that you can look at in fantasy, more so dynasty. That's where I would say, however, I'm going to be looking at some of these guys absolutely for my Keepers League. Now, I guess you could say that's a type of dynasty. Joey Ortiz was a target of mine. He was picked before I could take him. But in any case, Trio, Bryce Terang, Ortiz, Weimer, Monasterio, Frelick, all these guys are going to contribute for the Brewers moving forward and hopefully take some pressure off that pitching staff, because this pitching staff is in trouble. Let me turn over to get to those stats. They relied very heavily on a few guys last year, none more than Corbin Burnes, because Corbin Burnes started the most games, he had the most quality starts, he pitched the most innings, and had the lowest ERA and WHIP. Freddie Peralta did have the most wins, but also had the most losses, which surprises me. He also had the most strikeouts. The bullpen was very taxed, which is why Joel Payamps had the most holds, and Mr. Devin Williams had the most saves. Now, obviously, those are holds and saves guys. They're going to have the most. However, there were quite a few opportunities for holds and obviously quite a few opportunities for saves. But if you've heard the news, Williams is going to be out for a while. So I think Payamps is going to move into the spot. He's obviously the best guy they have other than Williams. He's going to be someone I'm going to be targeting. I actually have him in one of my keeper leagues, so I'm super excited. But the point is that bullpen is going to look even more like the workhorse this year because of the rotation or lack thereof that the Brewers have, especially after trading Corbin Burnes. They did get a little bit of compensation. Joey Ortiz was one of those guys, and another one of those guys is going to be in the rotation, potentially in the rotation. However, after Freddie Peralta, they're kind of in trouble because Brandon Woodruff is going to be out for most of if not all of 2024. They did sign him to a 2-year contract, but in any case, so they're, we really like this guy, and he's great. Absolutely is great, but not going to be on the field to be great, so it doesn't really matter. But in any case, Freddie Peralta is going to be the workhorse on that team. Some of the guys they have to make up that rotation include new guys that have been in the league for a while, and guys that are probably going to be out of place. I'll explain. So we're going to get, first of all, the best guy in the rotation, other than Peralta, Wade Miley. He pitched to a 3.14 ERA and a 1.14 WHIP last year. Now, that was honestly luck. Okay, read somewhere his ERA should have been 2 points higher. So we're looking at a 5.14 ERA. So, yes, he got lucky. However, hey, man, a win's a win. I mean, numbers don't lie. Well, they do. Numbers absolutely lie. But for this purpose, he was one of the better guys because of, after Burnes and after Peralta and after Woodruff, there were 7 guys that started games for the Brewers. 2 of those guys had ERAs in the 3s. One of them was Wade Miley. 3 of those guys had ERA in the 4s. One of those guys had an ERA in the 6. Okay? That's not good. There were relief guys, I talked about the bullpen being taxed, that had more innings pitched than the starters. We're going to get to some of the guys that they're going to have to rely on. And I'm not going to pick them for fantasy. First of all, Colin Ray, he was there, or been there the past few years. He did decent last year. He was one, I believe that was in the 4s. He's got stuff. he is a warm body and he can make pitches. I'm not going to rely on him to get me wins. I'm probably not going to rely on him at all unless I'm in a pinch and need strikeouts or a win or something like that. And Jacob Junis, he's a new guy. He was used last year most effectively as an opener or a secondary starter for the Giants. I'm not going to trust him as a starter, like a legitimate starter. I'll trust him for 2 or 3 innings. But what's that mean? The bullpen is going to be taxed even more because there's a literal guy in the starting rotation that is essentially part of the bullpen. Even more tax. Joe Ross. Joe Ross has not pitched in the major league since 2021. So what's he been doing? Been playing minor league baseball. Not starting many games. Not doing anything special. I don't know what this is. I was looking on Fangraphs, and that's who they have as pegged as one of the starters. I don't know why. They did sign him. I did double check. All my information comes from MLB.com, Fangraphs, Yahoo, ESPN, stuff like that. So stuff that you all can look at as well. And Fangraphs has him pegged, but I double checked ESPN. They did sign him. I don't know why, but he may surprise. He did well. The last, the only team he's pitched with is the Washington Nationals, and I mean, he wasn't bad. He wasn't good, but he wasn't bad. He wasn't terrible. He's not someone I want to start, but hey, not a Brewers fan. I'm not the head guy of the Brewers. So let's get to the next guy. DL Hall. DL Hall is the other guy that came over in the Corbin Burnes trade, and he has some strikeout stuff. He struck out 137 in 84 innings. That's pretty good. And then in the major leagues, he started a few games last year for the Orioles. That's who he came over from, if you weren't aware. He struck out 42 in 34 innings, so he's definitely got some stuff. I've read that he looks more like a reliever, more like a bullpen guy, which, if that's the case, you can go ahead and add that to the taxation that the bullpen is going to have for this year for the Brewers. But in any case, he's going to get an opportunity to start. A guy that I think should be considered one of the starters, Robert Gasser. This fellow also has strikeout potential. In his time in the minors, he has pitched 135 innings. Well, this past year's time in the minors, 2023. 135 innings, 166 Ks. So he's going to blow it past you. He's also going to induce, obviously, some hits, double plays, so on and so forth. But he's got some stuff. So I would likely believe Robert Gasser is going to get a chance to enter that rotation because Joe Ross is likely not going to stick in it. He might have a good few starts, like Graham Ashcraft. Might look great the first few, first 6 games, first few starts, but then he might fall off the face of the earth. And I would hope that the Brewers organization would not stick with that. Even though they do have young talent, I would hope that they would, young talent bats-wise, I hope they would also look at their young talents pitching-wise and bring Gasser up and say, hey, we're going to give you a chance, man, and let him cook. Let him cook with gas. I tried to use that as like a pun, like a play on words. I probably didn't do it well. I mean, there are a few other guys. Aaron Ashby, he could start. Bryce Wilson, he could start. So I'm not crazy about the opportunities pitching-wise, other than Freddie Peralta. And even then, he might be too overworked because him and Burnes were the only two to start 30-plus games last year and the only two to throw 165-plus innings. So that, again, shows you how much those two had to put in those 6 innings plus. Make sure you get those quality starts. And how little the other guys did. And not to diminish them and say they're bad, but the next highest guy had 124 innings pitched. Anyway, talk about the arrivals and departures. Arrivals, they got Rhys Hoskins. I think Rhys Hoskins is going to thrive. He's absolutely going to hit 230, 240. He's going to have 30-plus home runs, depending on the ACL. I think he's going to have 80 RBIs. He's going to score some runs because, depending on where Contreras is hitting, could bring him in. So I'm going to call it now. Rhys Hoskins, 80 runs scored, 30 home runs, at least 80 RBIs, 5 stolen bases. Just out of pure dumb luck. Even a blind squirrel finds nuts sometimes, right? He's going to trip and score 5 stolen bases for you this year. Batting average, 230. Okay? Calling it now. Other arrivals, Joe Ross, DL Hall, Jory Ortiz, Jacob Junis. Now, these next two, I am super excited and kind of just bottom of the barrel. Bottom of the barrel first. Gary Sanchez. He had a nice run last year where he hit like 8 home runs in a very short period of time and then went cold. Was hitting like 100s, maybe high 100s, low 200s. He's going to be the DH for the Brewers this year. I don't know how I feel about that. And the guy I'm super excited about, Taylor Clark, he is going to be utilized more so than, hey, we are out of this game for the Royals and we have to have someone pitch for us because we stink or whatever it may be. He is actually going to be used not as a starter and not as a closer, but he's going to be a bullpen guy who can get you some innings. He can throw some strikes, he can get some outs, and he's not going to lose you the game. He's done all of his work in Kansas City. So if you look, he may not look as like he's the sexiest person to bring in, but he's definitely going to help that bullpen. Now let's get to the departures. Obviously, Corbin Burns, a guy that you might not have noticed, Tyrone Taylor. He was with them last year. He made some pretty good plays in the outfield, stole a few bases. He is not with them, so I feel like that's going to, I say, burden the outfield just a tad more. However, there's so much young talent out there. I don't think it's going to be too bad unless you get to the playoffs and they're overwhelmed or fatigued with having 162 plus games. Yep. Talking about outfielders, Jesse Winker's gone. Mark Canha's gone. 2 first baseman DH guys are going to miss. Rowdy Tellez and Carlos Santana. I know they're not the most exciting names. And I know right now you might be thinking, what? Those 2 guys? What did they do for us? They got walks. They got on base, and they brought people around with their home runs. That's what they did. That's how you score runs. They didn't have the most run differential with a plus 81, but you weren't as bad as the Athletics with negative 339, okay? So, Tellez and Carlos Santana will absolutely be missed. They also lost another pitcher, Adrian Hauser. I really liked Adrian Hauser. He had an injury last year, didn't get to play the whole season. But when he did play, he wasn't terrible. And then 2022, I also had him a few times in fantasy, and he got me some points, got me some wins. So he went to the Mets as well. So they're going to miss him, obviously, with the rotation. They might have been like, oh, we should have kept Mr. Hauser. And the last guy they got rid of was Brian Anderson. He could play third, he could play outfield. Stole a few bases here and there. That's it for the Brewers. They definitely have some bats. More bats for the long run than right now. So, obviously, Yelich is good. That's someone you're going to be able to look at. Contreras, good. You're going to be able to take him immediately. He's going to be your backstop. Now, unless, he needs a day off and Gary Sanchez goes behind the plate, they move someone else to DH, move stuff around. Like, that'd be the only time you need to worry about Contreras not being in the lineup. Rhys Hoskins is going to be someone you'll be able to pick. He's going to be a late guy that you can absolutely take, and I'm not going to say set and forget, because depending on how his knee's going, he might need some days off in between. Especially, if he's getting those fast stolen bases we talked about, he might trip, fall, and hurt his knee. Pitching-wise, Freddie Peralta. If you're in a saves league or a holds league, you definitely want to look at Joel Payamps. Regardless of whether he's a closer, he's going to get the holds opportunities, and if he's a closer, then he's going to get saves opportunities. So this is probably going to be their division again. I think the Brewers are going to win it. I think they are going to be able to score enough runs to overcome bad pitching. Now, if the pitching is too bad, then obviously that's not going to work. They're going to need to do something with the rotation, and I see the rotation changing major by the end of the season, because some of these guys, they're not the guys. Well, that does it for the NL Central. That means we have the AL East and NL East left, and we're going to be traveling to Washington to talk about the 5th place team in the NL East. That also means we are about 10 days away from opening day. I'm not counting the series that's happening early next week. But in any case, this is a time for excitement. Fantasy drafts are coming up. Opening day is coming up. I am looking forward to this so much, and I hope you are as well. I hope to see you here tomorrow as we do talk about the Washington Nationals. This is Jake Cake, and I want to thank you for sharing part of your day with me.